Welcome to this explainer. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're stepping completely away from the grand strategies, the massive troop movements, and the big generals of history. Instead, we're going to zoom way in to a profoundly human micro moment. A single, fleeting interaction from the past that speaks absolute volumes about the human condition.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We find ourselves near Épehy, France. The Great War is finally nearing its end, but for the soldiers actually on the ground, it really didn't feel that way at all. Just sit with that location for a second. Right in the middle of unimaginable global destruction, we are focusing on one single specific patch of muddy earth.
Strange, isn't it? These three quiet words, spoken out into the freezing air, carry the entire weight of our story today. But who said them? And what exactly was so strange about this specific moment? Well, to unpack the profound mystery and the emotional weight of this dialogue, we first need to set the scene. Section 1. The heavy fog.
It was a world entirely defined by the bleakest elements imaginable. We're talking gray skies, bitterly cold air, and a heavy fog. While the politicians miles and miles away might have known the war was winding down, for the guy standing in the mud, exhaustion just hung over absolutely everything like a physical weight.
If we look closely at an advanced dressing station, you can really see the toll this took. Wounded men are being treated as frantically and quickly as possible. There is profound physical pain everywhere you look. But honestly, the most striking thing is the extreme fatigue. These guys weren't cheering about some abstract impending victory. That was completely overshadowed by the primal need for survival. They just wanted to go home.
Section 2. Enemies by design. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark yet deeply connected reality of our two main figures here. On one side, we have a British soldier lying on a stretcher. His uniform is completely caked in thick mud, and his hands are trembling slightly from sheer shock and pain. And then, just a few feet away, sits a German prisoner of war. His hands are loosely tied, he isn't fighting, he isn't speaking, he's just quietly staring at the ground, like someone who has already seen too much. They're wearing opposing uniforms, sure, but they are entirely united by the exact same hollow trauma.
I mean, on paper, they were enemies. At least, that's what they'd been taught, right? But this forces us to question the psychological divide between these two men. Strip away the nations and the orders, and you're really just left with two exhausted humans in a freezing field. The whole concept of being an enemy in this moment was just an artificial condition, violently layered right over top of their shared humanity.
So, let's trace exactly how that artificial condition completely shatters. It starts with absolute silence and stillness. For a while, neither man even moves. Then, the British soldier slowly turns his head, and then their eyes meet. In that tiny fraction of a second, an incredibly rapid psychological shift happens. All that military conditioning, it just evaporates in the heavy air.
Because what happens in that eye contact is profoundly moving. There is no anger, no hatred, just exhaustion and understanding. Can you imagine the sheer power of that realization? All the mandated hostility they were supposed to feel for each other was totally washed away, replaced by this deep, shared fatigue. Section 3. The silent offering. Now, I want you to consider this number, 2. There's an incredible symmetry to this in our story. The British soldier reaches into his pocket with shaky fingers and pulls out a small pack of cigarettes, and inside, exactly 2 cigarettes left. It's this tiny, precious inventory of comfort in a world that is totally devoid of it.
He pauses for a second, and then he holds the pack out toward the German. Now, at first, the German prisoner hesitates. He's confused. He stares at it like he isn't quite sure if this is a trick or if this moment is even real. But then, the British soldier just gives a simple, powerful nod and says, "Go ahead."
Let's move to how this builds, because it happens in such a precise, fragile sequence. Step 1. The German soldier reaches out, moving incredibly carefully. Step 2. He gently takes 1 cigarette from the pack. And then, step 3. For a brief, fleeting second, their fingers actually touch.
Let the gravity of that sensory detail sink in for a second. It was nothing and everything at the exact same time. This almost imperceptible micro-action of their fingers brushing against each other, it was the physical manifestation of a massive psychological barrier being completely torn down.
Section 4. A shared flame. Now, what's really interesting about this is the return of our motif, that number 2. They both have a cigarette now, but they have a new problem, no fire. The German soldier notices the Brit struggling, so he slowly reaches into his own coat, and inside his small matchbox, exactly 2 matches. Again, it's this perfectly poetic symmetry of survival and sharing.
Let's walk through this sequence of seconds. The German prisoner, knowing full well that nearby armed guards are watching him closely, stays entirely calm. He pulls out the matchbox, he strikes the match. For a brief moment, a small flame flickers to life. And then, in a profound act of grace, he leans forward and lights the British soldier's cigarette first. He only lights his own after the wounded man is taken care of. He becomes the ultimate catalyst here.
The match burns out, the flame faded, but the moment didn't. That brief physical spark of light represented something so much bigger. It was a lasting cut straight through the literal gray fog of the weather and honestly the metaphorical gray fog of the entire war.
Section 5. Just human. Notice the wild contrast here. In the background, the macro war is still raging. In the distance, you hear the voices, the frantic movement, the absolute chaos of artillery and death. But in the foreground, right in that small, intimate space, there is micro peace. They're sitting in complete silence, side by side. And as they smoke, their exhaled breath drifts upward into the cold air and just blends together. It's no longer British smoke or German smoke. It is exactly the same.
Which brings us right back to our opening quote. The British soldier looks up toward the sky and quietly says, "Strange, isn't it?" Now, the German soldier didn't speak English. He didn't literally understand the words. But looking at the man beside him, he profoundly understood the feeling behind them. And so, he simply nodded.
So, the crucial point we really want you to take away is this complete breakdown of identity. These were just two young men, thousands of miles from home, violently caught in a machine way bigger than themselves. But by sharing a cigarette, sharing a flame, and sharing a moment, they totally dismantled those mandated identities. They stopped being opposing soldiers, they were just human.
It's a moment that strips away all the complex